What's going on, guys, and welcome to my audio review of the March 8th, 2024 edition of Friday Night SmackDown. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great weekend so far. A step back this week, I thought, following a string of strong shows from the Blue Brand in recent weeks. Not a bad show necessarily on Friday night, but not exactly an overly newsworthy show. Beyond what we got in the final segment, which I liked, and I thought it was a solid segment, with all the star power involved, Cody, we had Rollins out there, Rock, Roman, as advertised, accepting the WrestleMania Tag Team Night 1 Challenge for Rock and Roman versus Cody and Seth. The only issue with the segment, it was way too short. Now, I know you're probably laughing. The segment went about fucking 20 minutes, but 15 of those minutes, it felt like were all entrances from Cody, Seth, but primarily Rock and Roman. The Rock and Roman entrances, for as great as they were, and I did not watch the show live. It was the first time in a couple of weeks I did not watch the show live. I still, in watching after the fact, I skipped through all the bullshit, commercials, entrances, recaps, stuff like that. Even with that being said, I still watch the Rock and Roman entrances in their entirety. I'm one of those marks that like the grandeur and the pomp and circumstance that WWE provides. I've defended them before for that. Even the segment last week with Rock and Roman in the ring, the Bloodline, first initiating the challenge for Cody and Seth to face them on night one of WrestleMania. Even with that, I said it was perfectly fine, and I love the segment that we got from Rock and Roman in the Bloodline last week on SmackDown. This was just egregious, and I'll get to it a little bit later on, but it was literally like 20 minutes from when they announced the segment as far as being up next, around 9:30 p.m., to then when it finally got going with the four people exchanging words. Between commercials, and the entrance is primarily just standing around really kind of soaking in the audience reaction. And again, it was a great atmosphere. It was a hot segment. I liked what they did at the end there in addition to just accepting the challenge, which would, in and of itself, would have been fine, expected, but lame. The slap from Cody to Rock was what really made that segment. What they said was good. I mean, the cross-dresser line aside from Roman Reigns, that really wasn't necessary. You might catch some flack for that one, and understandably so. This segment itself could have been longer. It felt like they rushed there at the end to get that slap in from Cody, and maybe that was the point, to close off the show in a cliffhanger with Cody slapping Rock. What's going to happen next sort of thing, whatever. That's happened before. I know WCW used to do that sort of thing. Oh, we're desperately out of time, Tony Schiavone used to say. Maybe that was the intention, but it felt like it was desperately rushed, and now this is not 2 weeks in a row, but this was also the case with the Rock promo a few weeks back when he first came out in the Versace vest, cutting his first real heel promo being back in WWE. That also went off the air beyond 9:57. And that's the thing. I've seen a lot of people say in the last 24 hours, and listen, I agree with what people were saying last week. They got to get off of Fox because the constant blackouts, the audio editing, and I'm not even talking about the crowd sweeteners. That's a WWE thing with like the crowd reactions and shit and piping and crowd noise. I'm talking about during last week's opening segment with Rock and Roman going back and forth and whatever, the constant blackouts and the audio being tampered with because Rock was swearing, whatever, but like the crowd sign, which I think is what it was, I found out after the fact, and maybe I already talked about this in the review last week, but I guess there was a crowd sign, PW Insider said, that said, "Die Rocky Die." And that was the reason why they kept blacking out the feed during that Rock promo last week. They were so sensitive about that, I guess they didn't want to take away the sign, God forbid, which they typically do. Historically, they have. But in that one segment, they didn't. So they kept cutting out the crowd, kept cutting out the feed. You couldn't see anything. You couldn't hear anything. It was terrible, and it happened constantly throughout that 40-minute segment on SmackDown, which otherwise was great. That was not the case this week. And I can understand people saying at that point, oh, they got to get off of Fox. They got to stop with this bullshit. I agree with that. My main issue with this segment wasn't really with Fox, because people were like, oh, they ended the show way too early. Fuck the news for coming out of 10, no overruns, whatever. They don't need an overrun. 2 hours is more than enough. They started the segment around 9:30, 9:35. And then with the entrances, they didn't really get going until 9:50. In this case, you can't really blame Fox. That's a WWE problem. Again, I'm all for the entrances and the grandeur and stuff like that. But when it comes to stuff like this, you need to get your shit in. It's more about the substance than it should be the style, and the style's great, and WWE does that better than anyone. But they also got to get the substance in there as well, so they delivered on what people were watching for. They did last week, with Rock and Roman in the ring for like 40 minutes. This ate up a ton of television time, but they wasted far too fucking long on all the entrances alone than they did the actual segment, which was kind of a problem. But we'll get to the segment a little bit later on as we close out the review. As we start here, we open the show with Logan Paul, the United States champion, in the ring. Logan Paul was not on last week's show, but he did cost Randy Orton his opportunity to advance to WrestleMania for the World Heavyweight Championship when he screwed him out of that match at Elimination Chamber. So he was out here, was Logan Paul, brought out KSI. The big thing about this segment before Orton came out and RKO'd KSI, and KSI is also a childhood wrestling fan along with Logan Paul, so him taking the RKO, I'm sure, was a big thing for him. And he sold it well, too. Like, I'm sure he was fucking on cloud nine taking that RKO from Orton. That was cool and all, and that's going to get them a lot of media attention. But the big thing from this segment was the fact that, I guess, at WrestleMania going forward, and WWE put out a press release as soon as Logan Paul was done saying this in the segment, WrestleMania will mark the first time that they're going to have an in-ring sponsor on the mat. Now, the promotional stuff is not new to WWE in recent years. They did the Cinnamon Toast Crunch match at Mania last year between Rey and Dominic. The Slim Jim stuff, the Slim Jim Battle Royal. They've been doing this stuff for a while now in the Triple H, Nick Khan era of WWE. I've seen people say they're personally bothered by it. Myself, personally, I'm not. I'm not really bothered by it. It doesn't really bother me. As long as it doesn't really affect the match too much. I mean, you can have a themed match and whatever, but if they're not out there in fucking Cinnamon Toast Crunch costumes, or they have to put a Slim Jim on a pole type shit, other than that sort of stuff, I'm fine with it. So Logan Paul's Prime Energy drink is going to be the sponsor, the mat ring sponsor, for every PLE starting at Mania and that point forward. How long is the partnership going to last? Is it for a year? Is it just for the foreseeable future? I'm not sure. But that's cool. I honestly really don't have an issue with it. I think UFC's done that sort of thing. WCW used to do that sort of thing. Maybe even, I think TNA at one point had the 5-Hour Energy sponsors, and even in their six-sided ring a while ago. So WWE getting in on that game was honestly a little bit later than expected, but now that Vince is gone, he never really wanted a sponsor on the mat. Them doing it now is understandable given the new era of WWE. Personally, it doesn't bother me. So like I mentioned, Orton came out, interrupted, laid out KSI. He stuck around after that for a tag team match, teaming with Kevin Owens against Grayson Waller and Austin Theory. A follow-up to last week's main event where Orton beat Theory in that awesome-looking RKO, with that amazing RKO in midair from Orton. Just fantastic. So they had a follow-up here. Good stuff. The crowd was behind Orton and Owens throughout. Waller and Theory playing their theories. Theory and Waller playing their roles well here, I thought. And just an otherwise good tag team match. I enjoyed it for what it was. Orton and Owens going over. Logan Paul striking Orton and Owens when the match was over with the brass knucks. They got the better of him, took the brass knucks, did Orton. They were left standing to close out the segment. So it's pretty clear at this point that we're getting a triple threat at WrestleMania for the United States Championship. Personally, fine by me. I mentioned that last week. I would have preferred Logan Paul defending against LA Knight, who was also not on the show again in person. They've cooled off LA Knight as far as how they've been booking him, which is to be expected given where he is on the card right now. Again, I would have preferred him have the single spotlight at Mania for a championship and not just against AJ Styles, but it's a match that makes sense. We heard from AJ on the show explaining his actions for why he attacked LA Knight at Elimination Chamber, mentioning that, listen, going back 5-6 months, it was LA Knight taking his spot in the what was supposed to be his opportunity at the Undisputed WWE Universal Championship. And they settled that score, I thought, of the Rumble when they all got an opportunity at the title and they all lost, then Roman Reigns retained. But I guess what he's probably primarily pissed off about now is the fact that LA Knight cost him a chance to even qualify for Elimination Chamber. Styles did not immediately return the favor, but he did fly halfway across the world to Australia to cost him the opportunity to advance to WrestleMania there. So, and he even mentioned that here in his promo too. And that aired a little bit later on in the show, but he did say, why did I fly to Australia just to beat up LA Knight? And he said what I just said. So good stuff there. We didn't get those guys in the arena on this show. But like I was just saying, Orton and Owens challenging Logan Paul at Mania for the United States Championship. Perfectly fine by me. It should be a good match. It gets Owens on the card. Owens, I don't think Orton should be beating Logan Paul for the championship on that show. He very well could, as well as Owens. I'm kind of hoping Logan Paul retains. I don't know if the Intercontinental Championship is changing hands, but last year we really didn't get a lot of title changes at WrestleMania. If we're getting a new World Heavyweight Champion this year, hopefully, if we're getting a new Undisputed WWE Universal Champion this year, again, hopefully, if we're getting new champions crowned in those two matches, probably the Raw Women's Championship, the Women's World Title. Hopefully the SmackDown WWE Women's World Championship, that one as well, between Bayley and Io. Hopefully new tag team champions. I'm not sure if they need a new United States champion. So I'm hoping that Logan Paul retains. Maybe he faces Orton one-on-one at Backlash in Paris. Who knows? I still want LA Knight to be the one to beat Logan Paul for that belt. Might be too optimistically thinking there, wishful thinking there, but still, hopefully that's the direction they ultimately take down the road. Speaking of Bayley, we did hear from her on this show in a sit-down interview segment backstage with Kayla Braxton. Well done, short and sweet, with Bayley just discussing Dakota Kai's betrayal of her last week on SmackDown, why she shouldn't have trusted her. I mean, no shit. Dakota Kai has a history of turning on people in NXT, from Raquel Rodriguez to Tegan Nox to now Bayley. It really wasn't entirely surprising. It wasn't surprising at all to anyone but Bayley. But I thought she sold the explanation well here. It was a good segment, mentioning that she kind of had what was coming to her. And that was reinforced by Bianca Belair, of all people, actually. In a segment that aired right after this was over, they showed Naomi watching the interview with Bayley. And you can kind of tell that she was conflicted watching it. Bianca walks in and basically says to Naomi, why are you sympathizing with her? Like, this is a woman that ran with Damage Control for the longest time, made life a living hell for everyone on Raw and SmackDown in our women's division. So you really have no reason to sympathize with her. And I'm glad Bianca said that. Bianca's not running out there immediately to her aid. And she might eventually do that, come to Bayley's aid, and maybe even join up with Jade Cargill. We don't know. But Naomi being more conflicted makes sense. She has known Bayley a lot longer than Bianca has, actually. Naomi was there years ago. She left in 2022, but she came back in the Royal Rumble. Prior to that point, she had known Bayley since Bayley arrived in the main roster in 2016, maybe even prior to that point as well. Kayfabe speaking here. So it makes sense why she wasn't around during the Damage Control era. Literally, when Naomi came back, she came back days before Damage Control ousted Bayley from the group on the SmackDown after the Royal Rumble. If you can think back, Damage Control did not debut until SummerSlam 2022. By that point, Naomi was long gone. Her last appearance in the company prior to that point was in May of 2022. So she was not around for the Damage Control days with Bayley in charge at all. So it kind of makes sense as to why she would sympathize with Bayley. So Naomi going to Bayley's aid makes sense. Naomi already lost at Elimination Chamber. She lost to Tiffany Stratton last week on SmackDown. I'm glad they kind of found a direction for her and something for her to do, so she's not just on the back burner. Oh, you're back in WWE. We have nothing for you to do. This does give her some direction, which I like. And Bianca might eventually get involved. She might not. But the fact that she's currently not, in favor of forgiving Bayley so quickly makes a lot of sense because they've been arch enemies for like 2 years now. So I like that a lot. Bobby Lashley took on Karrion Kross. So I mentioned last week they had dueling promos to kind of set up this match for the show. No one probably knew this match was happening unless you pay attention to WWE social media and whatever. They announced the match on SmackDown Lowdown last week. They did not make any mention of it at all on SmackDown itself last week because they had dueling promos that aired on WWE.com. They were supposed to air, I believe, on SmackDown, but got cut due to the time constraints, the Rock Roman segment running long, blah, blah, blah. So we never ended up getting the promos airing on SmackDown. Not that it really would have made much of a difference, but it's worth noting. So we got the match here. I liked the match. I thought it was fine for what it was. It was an improvement over the match they had at the SmackDown that I was at 3 months ago. Tribute to the troops. They've basically been feuding ever since. Have Bobby and Karrion Kross. Pretty much since that New Year's Revolution edition of SmackDown 2 months ago, when Karrion debuted along, he didn't debut, but he debuted his new faction, the Final Testament, Paul Ellering, Scarlett, AOP, blah, blah, blah. And they've been feuding with Bobby and the Profits and BFAB ever since, and BFAB got involved a few weeks ago. I honestly don't blame anyone for not giving a single shit about this feud. I don't mind it. I think it's a good use of all involved, but I can't sit here and lie to you and say it's been overly exciting, because it really hasn't been. It's been boilerplate booking with everyone involved, really. It's a tag team match this week, it's a six-man tease this week, it's a singles match this week. It's the same thing week after week, and a lot of non-finishes too. Either matches don't get started, or it's a DQ. We got that here with Bobby and Karrion. The match was interrupted by AOP attacking Bobby, so Bobby wins by DQ. Everyone gets involved. BVAB and Scarlett go after each other. AOP and Profits go after each other. Karrion tries to get the better of Bobby. Bobby retaliates, gets the better of Karrion Kross. So I thought it was really interesting. Again, another .com exclusive they put up on their website and on their social media after the show was over. Karrion cut like a 1.5 minute promo. And it was actually, the guy's a great promo, but you don't really see that because he's oftentimes cutting like dark, cryptic promos on SmackDown that really don't amount to anything, so they mean nothing at this point, a la Bray Wyatt from like 10 years ago. But his promo was interesting because he mentioned that, Montez Ford is really the breakout star of the group, but he can't really break out with Angelo Dawkins dragging him down, and Bobby wanted to steal the spotlight. So I thought that was interesting. I don't know if they're going to go in that direction, and it was interesting too because he was like, Bobby's obsessed with winning, and I don't really care that I didn't win. And that's part of the fucking problem with Karrion Kross. The guy never wins anything. He never really wins anything of importance ever on this show. He'll get the occasional win, but never really when it matters most. So that's kind of the problem. But him playing mind games with Bobby, and hopefully, I would love to see Montez emerge from this as the breakout star. Am I confident that's going to happen? No. But I thought it was interesting he brought it up. It might end up being nothing. It might end up being something. I don't know. As far as where this is going, I think the endgame is not Bobby and Karrion really being the focal point one-on-one, but rather the six-man tag team match we did not get a few weeks ago. They teased it, didn't deliver on it. I think the ultimate match is Bobby and the Profits versus Karrion and AOP. Now, we're a month out from Mania. You would think the endgame is at WrestleMania. I don't think it is, honestly. I really don't. You would think so, but they already have LA Knight and AJ. They already have the United States Championship. They might have a women's tag team match at Mania. I was hoping for Bianca and Tiffany, who I'll get to in a moment. Doesn't look like we're getting that, but they might do Bianca and Naomi or Bianca and Jade, or maybe all three against 3 members of Damage Control at WrestleMania. I don't know. We have Bayley and Io. My point being, they have a lot of undercard matches for SmackDown and Mania, and that's not even including Roman and Cody, a Raw guy, for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship. I don't think we're getting Bobby and the Profits versus Karrion and AOP at WrestleMania. I don't think they can hold out that long anyway. It really hasn't been all that interesting of a feud to justify dragging it on for another month to blow off at WrestleMania. Logically, it would make sense, but I'm not even sure there's room on the card for that match. I would like to see it just to get Bobby on the card, because the guy was screwed out of the match last year. He was supposed to face Bray Wyatt in a match that was probably going to be terrible, but let's face it, but, it is what it is. But because Bray got sick, Bobby got screwed out of a match at Mania. He did win the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, which is honestly probably where he's going to end up this year, but he ended up in that, won that. He was at WrestleMania showing off the trophy, but that was it. And I felt bad for Bobby Lashley. He probably will not be on the Mania card again this year. He probably won't even appear, to be honest with you. He appeared last year. He might not even make an appearance this year on the show. Him, the Profits, AOP, Kross will probably all end up, I would have to think, in the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. I hate to say, that's not even including Rey and Santos, too. I'm hoping we get those two one-on-one at Mania. Rey Mysterio, I think they would make more of an effort to get on the card at Mania than Bobby Lashley, and that's just a fact. So, honestly, now thinking about that, they probably are not getting a Mania match, and that sucks. It especially sucks for Bobby Lashley, but that's just the way it works. You can't get everyone on the card, and that certainly is not a WrestleMania match. To me, I wouldn't mind it personally, and we've seen worse shit happen at WrestleMania, but the card is so stacked as it is, and the roster is as deep as it is, you just can't get that match. You can't get the match on the card for, a 2-minute affair? Like, who gives a shit? Tiffany Stratton, whose WrestleMania status is also in question right now, continuing to make consistent appearances on SmackDown, which I like. They're putting her on the show every week. She's obviously gradually getting favorable reactions from the audience, so she's a heel. They're going to have her turn on the audience at some point, cut a promo. They did that a couple of weeks ago at the Elimination Chamber press conference. And coming out of the Royal Rumble, and even going into Elimination Chamber, they were pretty strongly teasing something with Tiffany and Bianca. They had no major interaction at Elimination Chamber. Tiffany did not eliminate Bianca or vice versa. They had no interaction last week. Bianca was not on that show. Bianca was on this show, but she and Tiffany had nothing to do with each other. So I'm pretty doubtful at this point, unlike a couple of weeks ago, that we're getting that match at WrestleMania, unfortunately. She did face and beat Michin here in a matter of minutes. They're teasing something with Michin, again, whose story is playing out on WWE.com on their YouTube channel. They posted a video of her continuing to get frustrated with all the losses she's been racking up in 2024. I don't think she's won a single match this year. She's lost to Tiffany twice now. She failed to beat Io Sky for the WWE Women's Championship back on the New Year's Revolution show. And I think she lost another match to someone else after that. But she hasn't had a lot of luck this year. She also lost, obviously, in the Women's Royal Rumble. I don't know what that's going to amount to. She hasn't really had a lot of interaction on TV with AJ Styles and the rest of the OC. That's just a dead faction at this point. Maybe she turns heel alongside AJ. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure if that's a major story that's going to have an actual ending, or if it's going to go the Nikki Cross route where they tease something and then they really have no endgame there. So I'm not exactly sure. But the match was nice while it lasted. Another Tiffany win. You love to see it. Dragon Lee back on SmackDown this week. We have not seen Dragon Lee on SmackDown in months. I know he was doing his thing in NXT for a while. He was the NXT North American champion, which he was still appearing on SmackDown as champion, by the way. He won that belt 3 months ago when I was there at Deadline. He won that belt, defended it in NXT, even on SmackDown as well. And then coming into the new year, for whatever reason, he never appeared on SmackDown. I think this might have been his first SmackDown appearance after appearing on SmackDown Lowdown last week. His first actual appearance on SmackDown since December. He was, like I said, he was in NXT for a few months, going into Vengeance Day, where he lost to Obafemi in that NXT North American Championship match. Put him over on that show again. And I don't think he's been on any WWE show since then. So he was back here, thankfully, taking on Angel of I almost said the LWO, of Legado del Fantasma. A really fun match. Again, didn't get a ton of time, but for what it was, a really, really fun match. Dragon Lee winning. Let's get him back on TV consistently. He was gradually getting over when he was on TV, racking up wins a few months ago, and then he just fucking disappeared. I don't know if it was a visa issue or something else, but he was back here, won the match, great to see. Legado laying him out afterwards, so pretty basic stuff. Rey Mysterio, despite returning last week, was not on this show. No one from Legado or from LWO, again, I'm mixing it up, no one from LWO was out here to save Dragon Lee. He was celebrating with the LWO backstage on SmackDown Lowdown a week ago. I know Rey Mysterio may not have been on the show, he may have had other obligations. Where was the other members of the LWO, though? Carlito, Wild, Del Toro, even Zelina Vega. No one could bother to show up to help this guy? Like, what the fuck? I would not be looking to the LWO for help if I was Dragon Lee, because they are clearly no help to him. They really have not helped him out at all on SmackDown in the time that he's been on the brand. But this was a really fun match, though, to kind of get more heat on Legado going into Rey Mysterio's return next week on the show. Then the final segment that everyone came to watch, Rhodes and Rollins confronting the Bloodlines, Rock and Roman. Of the 20-minute entrances, which were just egregious, like I said. It is worth noting Cody and Rollins came through the crowd, kind of Shield style, which was cool. Rollins wearing another ridiculous outfit. Doesn't justify Roman calling him a cross-dresser. You just can't make that sort of comment in 2024. You just can't. It's just not really necessary. People are going to be bothered by it. It's not tasteful. It's just a low blow. I mean, the guy dresses like a clown. I mean, when Rock calls him that, it's not exactly inaccurate. But calling him a cross-dresser, kind of distasteful, definitely not necessary, so I can understand people being bothered by that. I'm honestly kind of shocked it didn't come from The Rock, because The Rock would have made that comment 20 years ago. You just can't say that sort of thing in 2024. I think Roman saying it, honestly, if Rock had, I mean, it's bad either way, but if Rock had said it, I could see more mainstream outlets picking up on it, and maybe they soon will. I mean, it's already been a day, I haven't really seen a whole lot about it. If it was Rock, that could definitely be a bad look for his image, even though he's a heel, sure, but, you know, you probably shouldn't be saying that sort of stuff. It was Roman, though, surprisingly. Anyway, of the entrances, I should note this, aside from Cody and Roman, or Cody and Rollins, there I go again, coming through the crowd, Rock came out with this fucking awesome entrance. Same music, because people were wondering, oh, we're getting Hollywood Rock theme music back. We're not, because I feel like if he was, he would have gotten it back by now. He does have a new entrance where, like, and again, you could say it's ridiculous, it's over the top, but that's the point. Where, like, the lights go out, music's still playing, a lightning bolt kind of shocks where Rock is supposed to appear, and then he pops up. It's pretty fucking cool. So I thought that was awesome. Nothing really of note that they said in the ring. They kind of wasted time. Cody and Seth came out. There was some fire in there. There was some passion. I like that. Kind of going back and forth. Primarily Rollins with Rock and then with Roman as well. It was really Rock and Rollins going at it here. Rollins accepting their challenge on Cody's behalf for the tag team match on night one of WrestleMania. So that was made official. And again, I wasn't watching live, but you can kind of tell they were running out of time. And I saw the video from an alternate angle of the cameraman really wrapping it up, like doing the wrap it up sign. And like making a clap noise. I don't know if they were trying to get Rock's attention because he was talking, or because they were trying to make that look like, hey, you got to do this slap. Probably the latter, but if it was the form, that'd be pretty funny. Like, hey, Rock, pay the fuck attention. We got to go off the air. The news is about to air. Like, stop talking. This happened a couple weeks ago, too. They didn't have to deal with this last week as Rock opened the show with Roman, but they might have to have their segment start the show going forward if they're going to continually run into this issue. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I don't really care. But the company clearly might have a problem with that, and Fox as well. They continue to pull this shit. I mean, I know it's The Rock. He's probably got some leverage, but still. You can't do that sort of thing. So the overall segment was solid. I was hoping for more from it because it was the first time all four guys have been in the same ring in the same vicinity since the press conference a month ago. There was a lot of hype and excitement around the segment. And it did live up to the potential in the sense that we got the tag team match announced, cool. And then Cody slapped The Rock and the show went off the air at that point. Great cliffhanger. Again, that was probably intentional. I don't know if they just ran out of time. Maybe that was the intention to make us question that. I don't know. Either way, that was great. So I'm glad Cody finally got one over on The Rock. Didn't leave him laying or anything, but a slap is enough. And then we'll see how Cody and Rollins respond on Raw. Probably not an overly eventful promo coming up on Monday from those two, but it's better than nothing. So Rock will be back next week. At WrestleVotes, is a pretty credible source, had said on Twitter earlier in the day that they might announce a Rock concert for Nashville next week. Rock will be on that show. That was already announced. They might announce a Rock concert for the first time. I know people are probably thinking of the 03 one, which was obviously the best one. He did do another one when he came back for the Cena feud in 2013. That one wasn't as good. And again, even some of the stuff he said in that one probably wouldn't fly today. But it was a funny segment even then. So they're going to do it again, I think, next week. They didn't announce it, but how could they? Like, they usually announce stuff the following week, which they did before the final segment. You can't really announce a Rock concert if Rock hasn't even come out for this show yet. So they might announce it on social media. He might just show up and do it. I think there's a pretty strong chance that we do get that next week. It could be terrible. It could be very entertaining. Rock seems to be finding his footing in this role. He's cutting his actual promos on Twitter and on social media, which is funny. Like 10, 20-minute promos that he can't get away with on SmackDown because the entrances alone last like 20 minutes. But, I think it's cool that we're getting this side of The Rock. He's really killing it right now, as is everyone else for the most part in this feud, in this rivalry. They're dragging things out. I think the focus should primarily be on Cody and Roman, to be perfectly honest. As it should be. That's the real main event on night 2 for the championship. They're doing a good job of delivering the build for the tag team match. But we got to get back to Cody and Roman before WrestleMania. Rock is going to be there next week, so maybe not next week, but the week after. We're cutting it a little close at that point. But hopefully they can start to get back to the build for Cody and Roman, which is the real main event on night 2 and not on night 1. So, just a heads up. Overall, not a bad show, like I said. Definitely what felt like a filler show to me. They did announce some stuff for next week that will be interesting. Like I said, Rock will be back. Bayley and Dakota Kai, I'm really looking forward to. They did announce that. Dakota Kai's real in-ring return. She wrestled, quote-unquote, last week. She was cleared, but she didn't really do anything. She obviously turned on Bayley, so she never tagged in. Unless that match doesn't get started next week, I assume that match does happen on next week's show, so I'm looking forward to that. We have that, and then we also have Rey Mysterio coming back, and they might have announced something else. So we got a pretty loaded show for next week as well, which I'm looking forward to. Yeah, I would say this show is only really worth watching for the final segment. The rest of it was fine. The Logan Paul, Orton, KSI stuff was fine. The tag team match was fine. The Bayley interview was good. Lashley and Kross was good. I really enjoyed Dragon Lee and Angel. Tiffany got a win. So it was a solid show. It wasn't a bad show. I've seen far worse editions of SmackDown, trust me. But I thought the SmackDowns from other recent weeks that were far more eventful than this one were better than this one. This one was fine, but not overly exciting. If you didn't tune in, you didn't really miss much. So thank you guys for checking out my audio review of SmackDown for this week for March 8th, 2024. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. So what I think we'll be doing going forward for the next couple of weeks anyway, until the season wraps up, we're going to have SmackDown reviews on Saturdays, along with SmackDown Lowdown as well. I typically put it up on Sundays, and I might still do that depending on the week, but today we're having both, and then tomorrow, because the show's back now, Dark Side of the Ring has returned. Really good episode on Earthquake earlier this week. That review is already recorded. Will be up tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.